Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we're going to be welcoming back the CEO of Gain Therapeutics. This is a really interesting company combining AI with the biotech space. There's been a number of big updates since our last video, and I wanted to have Matthias on to provide an update and walk us through the strategy moving into 2024. Now before we get into it, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself, the channel. It's 100% free to do, and it helps get this content to other people who may find value. If you're not already a part of the community, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let me know in the comments section below if you're currently holding shares of Gain Therapeutics, your outlook on the biotech space for next year, and your price target for 2024. Now with that being said, let's get into today's interview. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we're going to be welcoming back the CEO of Gain Therapeutics, Matthias Alder. This is one that we've been covering for quite some time. The share price seems to have found some support. We're now moving in the up and right direction, which is awesome. And I was just talking to Matt before we started filming here. I was going through the press releases from December. Very active month for Matt and the rest of the team at Gain Therapeutics. So a lot to go through in today's presentation. Matt, thanks so much for being here and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, Bryson. Thanks for having me. Great to be back.
Yeah, it's always nice to get an update. So for those of you who are unaware, Gain Therapeutics, obviously a biotech player, harnessing the power of AI. But for those of you who maybe missed our initial coverage, Matthias, can you give us just a quick high-level summary on your company and your platform?
Absolutely. So Gain is a clinical stage biotech company, and the lead program is in a phase 1 clinical trial. It's a really exciting and differentiated program. So the drug candidate GT2287 has a best-in-class profile based on the preclinical data that we've been able to generate with that molecule. And it has shown the potential to have a disease-modifying effect in Parkinson's disease and potentially other neurodegenerative diseases that we may be able to pursue with this molecule. And that means disease modifying means that specifically for Parkinson's, that we have the potential to slow or even stop the progression of the disease with this drug candidate. And that's in an indication where there's only symptomatic treatments available. So there's no therapies that actually stop the progression of the disease. You can treat the symptoms for a while, then it gets really bad for these patients. And so having the ability to stop the progression of the disease is going to be very differentiating. And our drug candidate has that potential. And we were able to generate a candidate with our drug discovery platform. It's a computational platform that allows us to look at any protein in the human body, find novel binding sites on these proteins, and accelerate the drug discovery process from 2+ years to less than 3 months. It's a very powerful platform, very versatile, works in any therapeutic area. And in fact, we've used that platform to generate the entirety of our product pipeline, including, as I mentioned, the lead drug candidate.
Yeah, it's really incredible stuff. And I recall our last conversation, we talked about Parkinson's specifically, about how, yeah, your competition simply slows the progression of symptoms as opposed to your solution, which shows actual stoppage of them, obviously increasing not only the length of life, but the quality of life for all of these patients as well. The other thing that's super interesting here, Matthias, we hear AI all over the place now, and seeing this practical kind of use case in the biotech world really is quite powerful. So I wanted to kind of start off there. You mentioned you're in phase 1 clinical trials. Can we get an update on how that's going?
Yes, certainly. So we transitioned from preclinical to clinical stage with starting the phase 1 clinical trial in September of last year. Because we're in Parkinson's disease, we're starting first in healthy volunteers to establish the safety and tolerability of the drug. And it's really 2 parts. And the first part is a single ascending dose where we're giving different dose levels, so increasing dose levels over time with different subjects, but giving only 1 dose just to test out how far up can we dose and how can we dose up safely throughout the entire dosing regimen that we are planning to pursue. And then from the single ascending dose, the SAD part follows the MAD part, which is the multiple ascending dose phase of that phase 1 clinical trial, where we're treating the subjects for 14 days. So they get 14 daily doses, 40 doses once a day over the 2-week period. And then we're looking at, again, at different dose levels. And then we're looking at the safety profile and tolerability profile based on an extended treatment period. And that will, so we will be transitioning quite soon from the single ascending dose to the multiple ascending dose phase. So that's progressing very nicely. And then in Q2, sort of middle of Q2, we'll be finishing up the multiple ascending dose part of that study, and then have data that we can discuss, with investors and the public about the safety and tolerability. In addition, in these subjects that we're looking at, that we're treating for 14 days, we'll also look at target engagement activity. So our drug candidate targets a specific enzyme in the body that's involved in driving the Parkinson's disease. And we're going to be looking at whether in these subjects were able to engage in humans onto that target and increasing the level target expression levels in these subjects. And that's going to be the first proof of concept that the drug works actually in humans.
Yeah, it's a great update. And as you're alluding to here, Matthias, it's a very long development cycle. And that's why it's so interesting and impactful that you've harnessed this AI platform to shorten or condense the front end searching for these candidates, right? So you can get to these clinical trials quicker. And that's really, for me, kind of what differentiates this story. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about here, and you're probably a great guy to ask, in various different industries, there's different inflection points, right? When big catalysts are about to happen and investors kind of flock to these sectors. Now, biotech is no different. There's obviously various different inflection points along your journey here. So can you talk to us a little bit about what those are for people who aren't familiar with biotech and where you feel like Gain is kind of on that timeline?
Absolutely. So in biotech, and it's especially biotech companies that are focusing on developing new drugs, the value inflection points relate to that drug development process that you just alluded to. Well, it all starts out really with having exciting new science and technology. And you mentioned our platform that allows us to generate these new differentiated, potentially first-in-class or best-in-class small molecules. So that's the starting point. Then they need to be developed through preclinical development. And really the major inflection is then the early inflection point is moving from preclinical stage to clinical stage. And that involves not just proving out the science and creating a sort of preclinical and proof of concept in animals, but also establishing the safety of the drug in animals so that it can be taken into human studies. We accomplished that initial step now in September of last year. Now we are in that phase 1. And the next step, once you're in that phase 1 stage of development, that's studies that are designed to show that the drug is safe in humans. And we're able to achieve that inflection point and get to the point of demonstrating the safety of our drug in the middle of this year.
Yeah. It's really interesting as you talk through this because there's so many biotech companies out there, and all I can think of is a funnel or an upside down triangle type of image, Matthias, where it's just a series of refinement, right, until you get those top quality names or companies, and
right.
That's really how, as you're talking through this, how I'm envisioning it.
The next step, then, having safety in humans, and obviously what people are really interested in is, does the drug actually work? And what we're planning to do at Gain, and that's plans that we've recently updated to enable that, is that we're planning to start treating patients in the second half of the year in Q3. So going into Parkinson's patients, treating them for 3 months, and then looking at the end of the 3 months if we have been able to impact the biomarkers of the disease that are related to the mechanism of action of the drug, relating to the progression of Parkinson's disease. If we can impact these biomarkers the way we have in our animal models, that will be essentially a biomarker-based clinical proof of concept of GT2287 in Parkinson's disease. And that's going to be a very major value inflection point for the company. Now we're able to get to that point towards the end of this year or early 25, so depending on enrollment. So that's a relatively near-term inflection point, a dramatic inflection point that we can achieve with this program.
Yeah, I can only imagine how excited you guys are to kick off 2024 and get into this. Now, we talked a little bit about this proprietary drug development platform and the AI technology earlier in the video, but my understanding is there's been some recent improvements, enhancements, adaptations. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of the development on that side of the business as well?
Right. So the platform is actually quite differentiated and has been in the past because it's not just AI and certainly not just generative AI, right? Generative AI takes pre-existing information, needs huge data volume to be able to teach the AI model to extrapolate from existing data to something else. Our platform is different in that we're using a physics-based method. So we don't need large data. That's really important because with our platform, we find new binding sites on proteins that nobody has been able to see before, that there's no data that we can use to teach the computer how to find these other binding sites. So having the physics-based approach that looks at the binding free energy of the interactions of our molecular probes with the protein surfaces is really a big differentiator. And we have now incorporated, and that's the next wave of development, we have significantly enhanced our screening capability. So step one of the platform is finding the binding site, the novel binding site never seen before on the protein surface. And then the step two is finding a small molecule that binds onto that binding site. And we recently upgraded the platform to access chemical space of 50 billion compounds that we now can screen against those novel binding sites. And so we have novel biology with those allosteric novel binding sites and novel chemistry in that huge chemical space that we can now access. And if you're thinking about the power of the technology, if you're screening one compound per second, it would take you 16 centuries to screen 50 billion compounds. Right? And we do that in a matter of a couple of days. And so it's really transforming not the drug discovery as we know it with the capabilities that we now have with the computational platform.
Yeah, it sure is. And I'm just taken back to high school chemistry and science class, Matthias. It's just incredible the extent that this stuff has come. And we talked to a lot of companies that harness AI, and you mentioned less data being required. Obviously, a benefit to the system as you can run it quicker, right? The less data involved, the quicker the system can run. And as you said, there's so many different candidates to screen for and molecules. Obviously, time is of the essence. Now, the other angle I wanted to talk about a little bit, this came up in some of the comment section on our last video, balance sheet strength and some of your financing options moving through the year here. So I guess a little bit more financial based question for you, Matthias.
So the last public update we've given on the financial state of the company was in November with the Q3 financial statements. As of that time, we had $12.2 million cash on hand. Since then, we've been able to raise an additional $10 million in late November. So that really strengthened the balance sheet and opened up the path now to do that patient cohort in the phase 1 clinical trial that can give us that clinical proof of concept in patients. And that's been liberating, I think, for us to know that we have the ability to plan that and execute on that. But also, I think it's helped remove the potential what may have been a bit of a financing overhang on the stock that is now is reflected in the share price having moved up very significantly from the time when we did the financing.
Yeah, it definitely seems to kind of bounce off the $2 support line there, and it's trending up nicely, as we mentioned at the intro there. So that's great. So as I understand it, Matthias, then fully funded through 2024. Is that what we're hearing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely does take a little bit of the risk or uncertainty out of the story. Now, speaking of story, you're attending some events here, the World Symposium coming up in February, presenting on some of this exciting news. So, do you want to talk to us a little bit about what the game plan is for that event?
Absolutely. That's coming up actually very near term. And I did mention earlier our best-in-class preclinical data package. And what we're going to show at that conference is a further animal study that solidifies that statement that it is a best-in-class program that we have here. And the data that we are presenting at World is from an animal experiment where we've mimicked Parkinson's disease, the deficiency of our target protein GCase that is present in Parkinson's disease, and we've induced motor symptoms, locomotion deficits in these animals that are also a hallmark of the Parkinson's disease symptoms. And then we've made these animals sick, and then we've treated them with our drug candidate, and to look at whether we can repair that motor deficit. And we've submitted the data as it came out, already past the time point where posters could be submitted for the conference. So we submitted it late, but it was accepted as a late breaking abstract, not just for a poster presentation where you put up the results on the poster and you talk to it to people who walk by, but we also were accepted for an oral presentation at the conference. So we're going to be presenting the data in the plenary session to a large audience, which just shows I think that the quality of the data that we're able to show at that conference. We're under an embargo, so I can't talk too much about it. But look out for early February World Symposium, where we're gonna be obviously announcing that with press releases and things like that. So it's exciting data, and we're really happy that we've been able to, with the data that we've been able to achieve there.
Yeah, no kidding. Are you giving the presentation?
No, that is always the scientist. You don't want me to be in front of an audience of scientists because my background is a bit different, and it is really also the highlight of the career of our scientists being able to go to these conferences and present the data that they have generated. So it's, I think, a little bit of both there.
Oh, I can only imagine how proud they are. And yeah, I wouldn't want to be the one fielding questions from that audience. I can tell you that. Now, to close things out here, congratulations on that for being accepted both to the presentation and the poster. To close things out here, we talked a little bit about some M&A activity, the general optimism and interest in the biotech space as we're seeing the market start to kind of shift here. So can you give us a bit of an update on company strategy there, M&A opportunities, timelines, anything like that you can share with us?
Yeah, so timelines you can not possibly predict here, but I think we definitely have seen a very significant uptick in M&A activity over the last maybe 2 months in biotech, and that is great because it creates investor optimism, seeing all these very impactful exits, right, that create a lot of value for shareholders. It's also great because then the money that gets freed up from those M&A transactions that was invested in the acquired companies gets recycled and flows back into biotech. And I think that creates sort of a very healthy, favorable cycle of exits and money coming back, and that helps drive the sector. And in our space specifically, we have seen a very recently an acquisition of Caraway Therapeutics. They were also looking at, they're actually were a preclinical stage company, so significantly timeline-wise behind us in terms of their development. And they were focusing in a similar area as we are in Parkinson's disease on the lysosomal function, which we are able to correct with our drug candidate. And they were acquired by Merck for $610 million, biobucks upfront and milestones. A very significant transaction, though, which bodes well for generally interest in the space and the kinds of valuations that can be achieved.
Yeah, it most definitely does. And we've been hearing a lot of this from other CEOs and other members of the biotech space. So obviously an exciting opportunity specifically to this sector, and we would anticipate the M&A stuff continues to pick up. So I'll kick it back to you, Matthias, for closing thoughts. Thanks again for being here. Always a pleasure. I learn a ton from these conversations. We'll be sure to have you back after the World Symposium so we can get an update on how that went. But I appreciate your time, and thanks so much for stopping by.
Well, thanks, Bryce. It's great to love our conversations. Look forward to giving you further updates, and your audience in particular further updates. And I've just finished up the JP Morgan conference here in San Francisco. There is really a tangible sense of the new degree of optimism in terms of biotechnology generally and the sector, which is supported by the M&A transactions we just talked about, right? And so money coming back into biotech. And this is very timely for us, that momentum shift, because with Gain, we can achieve very significant value inflection points over the course of the year as a company. And so we're well positioned to take advantage of that momentum and look forward to moving the company and our program forward to that success at the end of the year.
For sure. As they say, timing is everything, right? So it's working in your favor. All right, great chat. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye.